All right. What's up, y'all? This is Wheezy. Welcome to the Weather's Truth podcast. I am joined by one of my favorite guests of all time, Dr. Bruce Baird. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. Your opening is really snazzy. I think it's snazzier than that last I remember.
Thank you. Yeah, it helps get the live stream up and rolling. So some people don't have any music. I thought I'd snazzy it up a little bit, if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah, very.
How are you, sir?
I'm
It's been a
fine.
while.
Yeah, I've been quite busy recently too. With all the Gaza genocide, Nakba 2.0, a lot of the stuff I've done, all of a sudden is like very relevant to what people are talking about, thinking about today. So a lot of people
Yeah,
sending me stuff, talking to me, retweeting things that I did years ago, all of a sudden almost become viral. Like, whoa, okay, so that's very interesting. I mean, it's horrible what's happening, but yet I've been trying to push, things I want people to consider for a long time, and now all of a sudden, like for a lot of people who would have ignored it in the past, all of a sudden are very interested in it. So
yeah. And I definitely want to um, talk about that as well. I know the theme was a little bit of philosophy, a little bit of
yeah,
the
I'm all up
scientific
for
method. I want,
philosophy.
yeah, I want to get into all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, the current stuff is definitely something. If you want to start out with, I mean,
Yeah,
the the thing is the whole the whole thing. There's a third rail to it because people conflate things that aren't even conflatable. They I've been talking about it on my show for the last couple of weeks. I had a podcast last week with Marcus Cage, who's a African American about my age. I'm Mexican American, and we were speaking about how it's just weird when people talk about racism and mix in Judaism with it. We're like, we both grew up thinking it was just a damn religion, and why does that religion get special treatment? You can shit on Christianity and no one has a problem with it. I mean, Islam is sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, but um, I mean, they're religious beliefs, and then when you break down what Zionism is, a lot of people conflate Zionism with race and creed when it's a political ideology, and a lot of people it seems to fly over their heads, and it doesn't matter if it's the people that are quote unquote with the bigoted the standard bigoted views. It's also the people that are full on pro Israel. They don't even understand that Zionism is a damn ideology. So I don't know where you want to start, Dr. Bruce, but feel free to
well, I can
whatever's
talk
on
about
your
whatever you want to talk about. I mean, if you're talking about ideas about religion or philosophy or race, I mean, I grew up. I'm older than you. I'm 67 years old. Actually, I'll be in a couple of weeks. I'll be 67. But you know, I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I mean, I've told people before. I grew up in the time period when Jim Garrison was our district attorney, and I was introduced to conspiracy theories at the very early age, and the whole Garrison investigation of the Kennedy assassination. But another thing was that I grew up in a time period when there was racism. I mean, I understood it. And I was a watcher. As growing up, I was always the kind of quiet kid. I could be funny. I could be, involved in the group, but I also watched. I was trying to figure out people. From the earliest age, I remember watching adults, watching, like how do they behave? What do they do? And then I also somehow imbibed these principles of very much disliking treating people differently. I don't know what my mother said. It's sort of this radical FDR thing that from her father. Her father was like a diehard Roosevelt um follower, and that was sort of the ideals of all people are created equal. That sort of Jeffersonian ideas of democracy, and I didn't I didn't like it when people were treated differently, when they would um, just because of whatever. I didn't like it, just because kids were weak, that they wouldn't be chosen, or that, those kind of things would bother me. I would want to help the kid, who wasn't being picked, or I'd want to pick him, or I'd want to, just thought things were not right. And when I saw a lot of what I would call racism around me in New Orleans, it was very much a biracial society there. And but I remembered as I grew up and got involved in it, then I would interact with people. I was very happy to be, to hang around a lot of black kids because I thought they were cool compared to like some of my uptight white friends. And so I would hang around, and then I started hearing the kind of ways they would talk, and I said, "Shit, these guys are even more racist than the white people in the way they talk and think about things." And so I started doing that, just paying again, watching, and realizing, wow, it's everywhere. And the same thing I would say with religion, that I would, I was raised Catholic. New Orleans was like, I don't know, a very high percentage Catholic, at least among the white population. And you can assume if somebody on the street, they probably were Catholic. And we didn't have much exposure to other religions. I mean, there's no few Protestant friends or whatever, and some Jewish friends. I started getting Jewish friends in grade school, high school, and I didn't really see that as different. Was that they definitely would associate themselves as Jewish as being something more than just a religion, though. I mean, they might not even go to a synagogue and they would still be Jewish. And but I wasn't that familiar. But then as I got even older, and I have to say this, as I became a teacher and I started having to interact with Jewish parents of Jewish students, that my first time when I was teaching high school, I had been a college professor, and then I started teaching high school. And in college, I was pretty radical in terms of I would introduce things that were controversial. I was teaching at a University of Alabama in Huntsville. That's where I was a tenure track professor there. And about 97% of my students were fundamentalist Christians. They were Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterians, but they were fundamentalists. They accepted the Bible as literally true. And I always thought, how is that going to work? I mean, I certainly didn't accept the Bible as literally true, but I would read things like the historical Bible. Who wrote the Bible? It's a book. Who wrote it? Or who were these, the four gospels? What are those four gospels? Who was Jesus? What was he? As a historian, I want to intercede. And I found some great videos that were challenging a lot of things that I thought about Christianity as if something historical had happened. And I introduced these to my fundamentalist Christian students. And I was kind of concerned, how are they going to accept it? But they seemed to like it. And I asked them, well, how come this doesn't bother you? And they said to me, it doesn't bother us. You're not forcing us to accept this. We don't believe this stuff because we accept the Bible as true. So we don't accept, evolution. We don't accept the Big Bang. We don't accept, historical Jesus, or that way you're presenting it. But we find it interesting. We find evolution interesting. They also knew that they were going to have to understand the Big Bang theory if they're going to take physics in college. So they had to understand that world. But that wasn't going to affect them, their beliefs. It was on faith. They accepted it on faith. And I said, yeah, great. I can do what I want to do. You can do what you want to do, and we can coexist. And I thought that was great. But when I started teaching high school, I tried to do the same thing in my high school class. And shit hit the fan with the Jewish students. Oh my God. They go to the parents and they'd show something I'm having in them read. And the parents would come back and say, this is anti-Semitic. I said, what? It was in a Collier magazine. It was an article summarizing archaeological work. Yeah, but it's denying, the historical accuracy of the Bible. I said, well, that's what archaeologists, they don't really accept the historical accuracy of the Bible, So that's an article. Oh, no. Their students refused to do that homework. And then the headmaster of the school called me in and said, well, we can't tell you not to teach this. And all these other teachers at school, by the way, were saying, yeah, teach it, do this. But I said, I can choose so many things to teach. I don't have to teach this stuff, if it's going to cause that much controversy. And I got the same same kind of flack from Muslim students and their parents, lesser so. They were much more open to it. The Christian students could care less, and a lot of students weren't really that Christian at all. They were, liberal parents whose religion wasn't big important. But for the Jewish students, it was much more than religion. This didn't have to do with any religion. This was something like I was challenging their existence. I was challenging the existence of the Israel state by presenting an article from Collier's magazine that talked about archaeology in the Holy Land. And it's like, okay, this is a different world. And I got a sense of that through my entire time teaching at the high school level. You have to kind of watch what you teach. And I taught radical stuff like 9/11 truth. So, I pushed the edge, and I was pushing a lot of stuff, but you realize there was something with Jewish students, Jewish parents that that really I was going to have trouble with. And then also, especially so toward the end, for 20 years, I taught the Holocaust. I've never tweeted this. I've never done anything with it. But for 20 years at college level and the high school level, I taught the Holocaust. I used a novella, a very famous one, Elie Wiesel, book called Night. I would teach that, and the students would all read it, and they loved the book. They loved it in college. They loved it in high school. And it told a very compelling story about this young boy who's sent to Auschwitz and how he survives there. And it's a very powerful novel. But I taught as a novel because that's when I started teaching in the 90s. It was a novel. That's the way it was depicted as. This was an autobiographical novel. Well, something happened. By the time I finished teaching, like 5 years before I finally quit teaching, all of a sudden, some students said, well, we read on Wikipedia that this was a history. This was a true story. I said, it's a true story? Yeah, it's true. Like Wikipedia says it. I said, it's a novel. I'm pretty sure it's a novel. Oh, no, it's true. And in fact, there was a court case where Elie Wiesel was in San Francisco going up a hotel elevator, going up to his room in an elevator. And somebody attacked him saying, you must say that's all lies. It's lies. That's lies. That book you wrote Night, that was lies. And they brought the guy who attacked him to court. And Elie Wiesel had to go on the stand in this like San Francisco court and had to say that it was all true, that everything that he wrote in Night was true. That book was true. So it was not fiction. Oh, that was a lie. And all of a sudden, Wikipedia and the articles all say, no, what? Not Night is not fiction. It is truth. Okay, this is interesting. And I remember I started teaching the book. I started having trouble. I said, all right, I'm going to tell you what I know. I'm going to present both stories. This is truth. This is, but I'm going to find, it just was very troubling because there were so many holes in the story. So many. And I realized after a while, I just couldn't teach it. In fact, why I ended up quitting, I retired. Yes. At the age of 60, I retired, but I just couldn't teach that subject anymore. I couldn't teach students fairly that same book, those same things that I taught because I knew too much now. But yet I knew I couldn't do it because I would get all hell would break loose if I try to do something that I understood now, which was that I've been teaching lies. And in fact, most of the things I learned in history that were lies, as I knew too much of it. I couldn't teach history anymore. And so I got on social media, and then I could start attacking all the history that I've been teaching for 20 years. It was very sad, but I said, the hell with it. That's just the way it is. I was teaching live for 20 years.
Yeah, isn't that something when you start to realize, God damn, how many what other things that I've been taught to accept as gospel throughout my life are complete shams. I mean, I've talked about this before. I don't know if I talked about it, with you last time around, but where my first red pill moment was leaving religion altogether.
Yeah, you told me.
I had been raised Catholic.
Yeah.
My parents are straight up from Mexico, and all the religious feasts and having the Lady of Guadalupe, a cornerstone of your culture. I mean, that's religion is what makes you Mexican American, and so for me to walk away from it, I was like a black sheep, man. And I still have friends. A lot of the good folks that I met growing up and going to church, man, the good folks. It's just they're really, really captured by what I would say this religious belief. But that was my red pill moment, and it was a hard one for me to swallow, man, because I had been taught that this was the right way to do things, that this is the way we do this, and every Sunday we do this, and if you don't do this, you're gonna burn in hell, and we got to do this. We get points to go, extra credit points to go to heaven, and all this bullshit, man. And I remember the week when I finally said, I'm done with this. I don't believe it. It was hard. First couple of days, I felt alone. I felt scared. I was scared to death. I'm like, what then happens? I couldn't accept it. And last week I went over the allegory of the cave, Dr. Bruce.
Philosophy.
Yeah. Plato's allegory of the cave, and that resonated with me in a deep level. It reminded me of my red pill moment of leaving faith behind. And so Then many years later, when I started to question the government, that was another red pill moment, because up until this point, I believed mainstream channels. If I saw it on the TV, it had to be factual. It had to be quote unquote truth. You know, um, whatever events happened, whether they be terrorist acts, shootings, this had to be as presented to us through these mainstream channels. And I
Yeah.
accepted it. And then when I realized it was just like my religious experience, leaving faith, it was very similar to it. And I'm like, holy shit. Everything I have been taught to believe and accept as fact is all theater. It's all nonsense. And so I've been thinking about it and pondering a lot about it. Like, is this done intentionally? Where some of us will actually see through the veneer of nonsense presented to us, so that we're constantly second guessing ourselves, and we're constantly wondering, oh shit, okay, am I going too far by believing this? Where do I stop?
Yeah.
Where do I cross into the realm of lunacy, if you will? I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Dr. Bruce?
Well, I think I could tell my experience best from talking about my own kids, right? So my kids are in their 30s, but I I was late to questioning the 9/11 story. I think I told you this last time, and I was there on 9/11 the day. I was glued to the television, and I was just stunned. I mean, people talk about shock and awe. I was shock and awe. I said, "What the hell is this? What is it?" I couldn't make sense of it. I remember even when that first building came down, whatever came down, now even the words they say, collapse, whatever, the words sort of define what you think about it is. And they're telling you on television right away. I've done a study this. They said how the words they use were very precise. They used the same words, and they gave words to things that you couldn't describe, which was very helpful to have a word to describe that. It collapsed. No, I don't know what it did, but it did collapse if you look at it. So anyway, I couldn't make sense of it. I didn't want to make sense of it. I'm teaching history. I'm teaching this subject. Luckily, historians don't usually have to get up to like 2001. You can cut off somewhere in the 70s or something, right? Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement. But occasionally I would see a documentary on Nova or something. I couldn't watch it. I couldn't see it. It was just too much. I couldn't make sense of it. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. And then finally, it was the summer of 2013. I remember this is like 12 years later. I forced myself to watch a documentary that actually was pretty reasonable. And I said, what is this? And then it was like, that was my red pill. That was the light going off. Like, oh my God, no. Yeah, that's when I understood. It didn't make any sense. It violated every rule of physics that I knew of. And I was raised as, science, math person, right? That's why it didn't make any sense, because it violates everything I understood about the way Newton's laws work. And then, of course, I got really into it, started watching everything. And gradually, I continued to work for another like 4 years at the high school. I would every year. I was a good teacher. I didn't try and I knew you can't hit kids over the head with this, but each year I would libel a little bit at the story. I'd bring it in. We'd talk about the Spanish-American War and the sinking of the Maine. Oh yeah, that's sort of like maybe what happened in New York City, and a little thing, and show a little video of this. Does that make any sense? That and introduce a little bit of physics. Always the physics, right? You want to keep the science. That's because we had a lot of good science students, so we can get to how did this work? How does this explain this? And I even talked to the physics teacher about, so does this make sense to you? I mean, I even got the teacher, looking at the data on World Trade Center 7 and agreeing that building fell in free fall time for that certain amount, like a couple seconds. It was in free fall time. How do you explain that? Well, it fell in free fall time. He didn't have any problem. He rejected this whole, questioning the official story, but he accepted the conclusion. Well, you know what? I think that building, maybe that was controlled demolition. Maybe they understood that World Trade Center 7 was so important with all these, government agencies in there. They had to plan it to bring it down in case, something happened, because they didn't want to have anybody getting access to all the secret files. So does that apply to the Twin Towers? Oh, no. Oh, Twin Towers, because the plane hit it, right? That's why they fell down. That was a different story. They didn't have controlled demolition. They had planes in it. World Trade Center 7 did not have a plane in it. So it must have been something they planned in advance, but it wasn't secret. Well, it was secret, but it wasn't something involving any kind of conspiracy. It was, they just won't tell you that the government does that kind of thing. Okay. That's it. And my students would understand there's something wrong with the official story, but that's about as far as they would go. They realize it violates rules of physics to accept the official story, that, say fire caused World Trade Center 7 to fall down. They understand that. But now I also try to do it with my own kids. And I tell my youngest son, who now is a senior computer engineer, software engineer, right? He's makes 6 figures, right? He's very successful. And when he was young, I would be talking about these things that I thought about a lot. I talk about 9/11. I'd show him the picture, and he's interested in it. He's a young kid, just like my father tried to introduce me to a lot of things way in advance of other students like that. I learned about, I learned in 2nd grade that you could subtract the bigger number from a small number. The teacher said you can't subtract the bigger number from a small number. My father said, oh, yes, you can. Have you ever heard of negative numbers? No, what's that? My father started launching into a lesson on negative numbers. And so I go next day and say, oh, yes, you can. Negative numbers. And teacher goes, oh, God, why did he do that? Because they do that in 3rd grade, not 2nd grade. So I was advancing my students questioning things. And my son was like that. He wanted to understand that. So he was all bought into it because it made sense, the questioning of this official story, even though, he wasn't even, he was young, very young when it happened. So he sort of had a sense of what it was. He was like 8 years old when it happened. But here's the point. He goes to college. He goes into engineering. He goes to a physics teacher, and he wants to do something to impress this physics teacher. So he writes up this paper on his own. I don't think it was required. He writes up a paper showing how the beliefs about 9/11 are sort of like Galileo, saying that the earth revolves around the sun. The people rejected it at the time. The church rejected it, right? But it makes sense to think about. He had all the ducks in a row, all the argument to prove that, yes, that this official story violates all the laws of physics to a physics teacher, right? Physics professor at his college he went to. And so the professor, he's expecting the professor to encourage him or praise him or do something. Oh, the professor just attacked him. Literally, I think he attacked him in the class the way it was, like went after him. How crazy. You're insane. Seriously, okay, this is not the way a professor should act to a student who's done a lot of work to do something, that, he put a lot of work into it. He thought about it. Oh, and then I realized, oh, no. Okay. I hadn't been in college since this happened. I hadn't done it, had to do anything like that. So I realized, oh, it's hopeless. Forget it. You can't say these things in college. You can't even think these ways in college. I'm trying to get my high school students, but they're not going to be able to go to college and think about these things. They're going to get in so much trouble. They're going to realize that they will not be able to get a job. They will not be able to, have a social life. They will, if they say these things or even think these things, because if they think these things, somehow it's going to come out. So my youngest son has proceeded to believe that it never happens. If I ever talk to him about it, what? He burned those brain cells. It's gone. And so it's like, okay, well, it makes me very sad. If you can't even influence your son to like stand up for something like that, what's more important than that, right?
But at the same time, unfortunately, that could be part of human nature where
survival.
Our kids will always be polar opposite.
Well, no, he wouldn't have been if it hadn't been for that professor, and of course, probably all the students at the school who would have done the same thing to him if he'd said anything.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And I think we touched on it last time, but I still am a believer in science, but there's a huge difference between science and quote unquote the science, the Faucian way of doing things. And I think it's quite apparent that ever since the COVID era, a lot of people have questioned what science really is.
We talked about that last time. Remember?
Yeah, at least for me, it was one of those things where it was sacred to me. It was infallible. And
we were taught to believe that too.
Yeah, and now that I look at it, I'm like, God damn, there's a lot of similarities to religious dogma.
Oh
in
yeah.
this, where if you question it, you're gonna get censored and banned. No different than if you were a member of whatever particular denomination or faith. If you start questioning certain tenets, you're gonna get excommunicated and banished from the community. It's the same damn thing.
Oh yeah.
And so this is why oftentimes I'm skeptical of both. And it's a damn shame. I used to have these shirts of science that said science doesn't care about doesn't care about your feelings, something along those lines. And I was huge into this thing called quote unquote science. But the last few years, I think the veneer of it has really come down. Um, for example, I used to be a big fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson. Used to follow his podcast religiously, quote unquote. Listen, I wanted some science based knowledge. I would listen to a lot of his stuff, but I started to realize that some of the stuff he was peddling was complete ideological horseshit, for lack of a better term. And especially when they would, like, if they had an episode on trans trans athletes in sports, I'm like, oh, this is a science show. Let's hear what the world's premier astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson has to say about trans athletes in sports. And it was all ideological horseshit,
Yeah.
not rooted in science whatsoever. It was all emotionally based to conform to the woke agenda. And I think that was one of the last straws that I had in subscribing to that show. I'm like, I'm done with this shit. This is not scientific at all. And so, um, I've often played a clip of a famous Neil deGrasse Tyson clip on the moon landings, but I mean that's a whole different other subject. But my faith in it, I mean, and that's kind of what I want to get into right now is with there's a difference between that kind of science, the dogmatic Faucian quote unquote the science, and actual damn science. And one of the things that I wanted to cover with you, Dr. Bruce, is the whole scientific method,
Right.
what that entails, and how that is real science. I mean, the stuff that we're seeing, the examples that I gave right now, that's not science. When you're censoring voices, especially voices during the COVID era that were being censored, that were outspoken against the COVID narrative, and mind you, those claims have now been validated truthful, and the same voices that were spewing this stuff years ago were canceled, banished. Some lost their YouTube channels forever, even though now we can say, oh well, yeah, shit, they were right. Was that really a scientific approach to handle these dissenting views? You brought up Galileo. That's a classic example of someone that said, you know what, screw this quote unquote consensus. This is what the facts are. I mean,
Oh, he was a good
it's just
Catholic
history
too.
repeating
He didn't
itself.
like it, he accepted the punishment of the Catholic Church. He didn't,
Yeah.
he was going to say it anyway. He knew he was going to get in trouble, but he did it. But
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I've done a lot of. I mean, my perspective about history is going to be different because I've done a lot of research in history, and one of my favorite things to do with history of science. So I've gone way back in, to the 50. Actually, I've gone back to the Greeks and the Romans in terms of
Have
science.
you read the book Structure, Dr. Baird?
Structure? I don't know that. No.
That's a scientific book written by what the hell's his name?
That's the title. Is it Structure?
I believe it's just Structure. I'll pull it up.
Okay.
But it was written back in the 1950s, and he essentially is writing it in the 1950s regarding scientific revolutions going back centuries before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a famous a book by a historian of science or philosopher of science called Thomas Kuhn.
That's it.
Oh, that's right. That's 62,
That's
1962. Okay, all right. And it's not called it's called Structures of Scientific.
I believe it's called Structure.
I'll look it up.
I
can Google this right here. We're talking. Thomas
Yeah,
Kuhn.
I
Yeah, I know
I
about
was
Thomas Kuhn.
listening
He
to
was
it.
a guru of a lot of people in the 70s, and his book was called what? Oh, shoot. A structure of scientific revolutions. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. We said structure. I said, oh, wait, structure of scientific. All right. So, yeah, I can talk about him too, as well as how it fits into everything. So, Thomas Kuhn, his view was that, uh, there's some, well, all right, he'll start with the time period when almost 100% of the scientists agree with each other. This is what happens. There's a consensus about something. So they all agree with each other. And that's considered the science. I mean, there's time periods when there is the science, when 99% of the scientists, and to really challenge that is very difficult. And in fact, if there's somebody who has an idea which in retrospect would be seen as a better idea, they're shunned. They're pushed off. They're not considered. They're rocking the boat. They won't get tenure. They won't get hired, or they'll get settled up, somewhere else. And then what happens though is that if that really was a good idea, and explains certain things better, and other people then join in and realize, hey, it does explain better, and then there becomes a sort of critical mass. It's a small minority still, but there's a critical mass of people who are challenging that official the science and seem to be able to explain the phenomena better than the science did. And then what happens is there is all of a sudden, boom, a revolution. And there are still people fighting it. The old, codgers are still there fighting it, resisting it. They're going down, 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 right? Their days are over, and the young whippersnappers coming up, and they start a new revolution. This new revolution eventually becomes the science. All right, it becomes, and then the same thing repeats. And he says he goes back in time and looks at all of the Newton, revolution, the Copernican revolution, all these ones that go back in time and see this happens the same way where, Galileo fit into that. He's fighting the system, fighting people have a vested interest in this story or the whatever it is, the Bible interpretation or the science, and eventually though it gives way to the next thing. Now, is it really ever the science forever ever? It is never the science forever and ever, right? There's not the science, because the science suggests it's perfect, that it's not going to change. People like to pretend it is. Scientists love to. Doctors, people who depend upon this for the authority they have, pretend that it is the science. That's even if they don't understand it, or they try to pretend they understand it, or they have to act like they are the representatives of this science, because it's almost like witch doctors, right? That's all I thought about. There was a very famous book by Keith Thomas. He wrote a book on magic. It's a classic history about the history of magic. And I remember he ended the book with saying that doctors were like the old witch doctors. The modern physicians were like witch doctors because they had to pretend. That was their power, the pretense of having this knowledge, this secret knowledge that you don't have, right? You, the layman, don't have this. And so that sort of opened my eyes a lot to like, oh yeah, that's right. And I've had enough experience. I don't know if I talked about it. I had enough experience with my own children when they were born in the 80s and 90s, especially my first one in 88. The hospital came in, and I was in there with the birthing and was all that wonderful natural birth that we were trying to achieve. But they came in and they started poking and prodding my little newborn, who was kind of underweight. He was fully underweight. And then they had this whole long list of vaccines that they were going to give. And at this point, this is not natural anymore. This is like interference. They're interfering in our ability to even to be able to relax or have sleep. So we said, you know what? We're going to check out. Oh, that'll be against doctor's orders. You're checking out early. Yeah, but against this, the doctor wants to make sure that help. I said, you know what? We'll take. Oh, well, if you're going to check out, then at least you have to promise that the first time, like the next day or whatever, you're going to go to the pediatrician and you're going to get all these vaccines done. Okay, whatever. Next day after, go to the pediatrician, and they say, oh, here are all the vaccines you have to have done. And they said, and I think my wife and I said, why? Because I said, we didn't have to have these vaccines when we were kids. What are these vaccines for? Do you have to have a chickenpox vaccine? That's kids get chickenpox. Why do I have to have chickenpox vaccine? Oh, you have to. Why? Because. Are you going to challenge my authority as a doctor who knows better what's good for your child than I said, yeah, we're the parents of this child, and I think we're going to just walk this way. So we did. We walked. And the kids didn't get vaccinated until they're old enough to decide, they want to go to public school and they want to get back. They want to be normal. So, But it's like, God, I realized they are like witch doctors, they have the truth. And if you question it, you're questioning truth, you're challenging authority, you're undermining the whole system just by questioning, this thing they say you have to do. You have to, why? So, and it's very similar to, the experts on anything like COVID or whatever. They are the experts. You question their authority, how dare you? That doctors are like that. If you question them, they're not like even the good old time doctors are still like, whoa, you're questioning my authority. Well, you might take your business elsewhere, find some other doctor, let you question their authority,
It's almost like a ego trip, like, and maybe most of them are probably not even aware of it, where I know it all. Believe me, I'm gonna tell you this. It's because I've experienced it personally, where you can go to 2, 3, 4 different doctors, and they can all 4 of them give you 4 different
Oh, that's true.
diagnoses.
Oh yeah, that's true. That too.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, all right, who do I go with? Like,
and if you go to the doctor and you say you need drugs, they'll give you drugs.
Yeah.
They will. I don't know. You tell them what's wrong with you. They'll agree with you, or something like that. I don't know. It's like crazy. Yeah. You have to, the way you present yourself affects very much the way they interact with you and what they tell you what's wrong with you. So I can't say I've had, positive experiences too, but COVID, it was notorious for the authority figures. And it, it's, you sort of suggested before, sometimes this expertise, so the experts are telling you things that are in your face that make no sense whatsoever. And the crazier it is, almost the better, that they're going to make flip your mind around. That, to me, it was what 9/11. It didn't make any sense to me, but nobody's telling me. I didn't pay attention to any kind of truth movement or something until like 12 years later. I just, I never looked at that stuff. It wasn't on my radar screen. And it wasn't until I was exposed to it, realized, oh, I'm not alone. Somebody else's question is bullshit too. And it made sense that it was. I thought maybe, I don't think thought I was crazy. It's just that I don't understand what this is. The same, like, let's say with COVID, from day one, I learned before COVID to not trust anything mainstream media said, especially if they're all on board the same thing. I said, forget that. If they're all on board with it, it's a lie. They're trying to push. It's like anybody pushes something too hard. A salesman comes and they're really pushing. I said, okay, it's for him, not me, right? He's getting a lot more out of this, and so I'm going to walk away from this person who's really hard selling me on something that I don't think I need. And so anyway, I don't. My attitude, and I do this with Twitter all the time. People ask me, or they'll call me, "Oh, Dr. Baird, he's an expert on explosives or explosions or something or other." I said, please don't call me expert, because expert means some bullshitter who's paid by the government to sell lies, and I am not. I'm just an historian. I'll claim, however, better or worse, I'm a historian. I still think of myself as a historian who knows enough about things to call BS when an expert tells me something else. That's the way it is. Experts are liars. And but how to convince people of that, because we're taught to, it really is hard. I've tried to work on that. How do you convince people to stop trusting experts? Because nobody's going to be able to put the effort in to try to understand things for themselves. Not all kind of things that a lot of things I talk about are just, I can see people rolling their eyes. The education system, maybe it was so horrible they're not able to understand things, or maybe it's just hard for some people to understand certain things. But it's like, they want to trust me. They want to trust me that I'm the expert. I said, no, I don't want to be an expert. Don't trust me. I'm not a guru. Do it for yourself. But they can't. So I try to present it as simple and straightforward as I can. But sometimes it is still mathematical, or sometimes it's a concept, which is, if I can find a video that shows it, or a common sense thing, great. But sometimes it's like you move into things that are hard, and then it's like, well, all I say, just don't trust what the mainstream media is saying. Learn to be distrustful of anything that's being pushed to you hard. But last thing I'll end with this is that here's something else, and this is very depressing for a lot of people about this trust in experts, is you start seeing, like with COVID or with 9/11, here come experts who challenge the official story. We have AE 9/11 truth. Or we have the people questioning, oh, I'll trust these people because they're trusting the BS that doesn't make sense to me. Well, if you keep digging, you will start questioning those people who are questioning the official story. They don't like that. Those people do not like you. They treat you like the official story people treat them. You are challenging them. You are challenging their authority. I mean, I've had enough run-ins with the 8911. I'm pretty nice about it, but I question them, and say, hey, I've done so much stuff. They won't consider that at all. They won't even look at that. They are the one thing they want to do. That's it. Nothing new. They don't want anything new under the sun, right? They don't want to question it. And anybody follows them on the same thing. Oh, I am a subversive. I'm trying to ruin their efforts to achieve truth or acquire truth by questioning their efforts to acquire truth or whatever. So it's very sad because you want to trust somebody.
Yeah,
you can't.
And it kind of goes back to what we started at earlier, where you start going down this rabbit hole, and it just takes you deep further and further and further, and so you then start questioning, okay, how far do I go? Does this shit just keep going and going?
Unfortunately, yes.
And that's unfortunate when you do see folks that question the official narrative, but they have then formed their own dogma on how to go about questioning the official narrative. And if you deviate from that, you're some batshit crazy guy. You need to be ostracized.
Yeah.
We don't want your input in it because we're the experts.
Yeah,
and so
it's not one person. They are a group of people. Usually, they're working together with other people before they get that kind of attitude.
Yeah, they're doing the same exact stuff that happened to them. 100%. You see that. And then you also see people that are ideologically captured, where areas they may have seen the truth. Like, I've seen this over and over again. I don't think he listens to the show anyway, so I'll just throw him out there. Webster Tarpley. Webster Tarpley did amazing work when it came to 9/11, wrote some great books on the matter. And then COVID came around, and that seemed to have fried his brain. COVID and Trump. And he sounded like and anyone that followed me for any amount of time knows that I am no fan of Donald Trump. But there's a difference between that and then just taking it, oh, he's like the next Hitler and all this stuff, overboard. And Webster Tarpley saw the damn truth with 9/11, but this next era, it's fascinating. And some people will get mad and be like, oh, screw those guys, they're liars. But I don't think that. I just think people just become, like I just mentioned, ideologically captured to certain ideologies, which blinds them to other shit. I mean, I could say the same thing about people that are still all in on Trump. That blinds them from seeing other shit. And so it goes all ways, being captured. And this is why, personally speaking, I try to stay away from all that shit. I try to stay down the middle. I think the truth is closer down the middle. Once you start veering to the extremes on either direction.
You mean political,
ideological, whatever it may be, when you start going to the extremes on either end, maybe you're getting closer to the truth, but how do you know that? Maybe you're getting further and further away, and so I try and be as balanced as I can, and try to use reason and logic, use Occam's razor, when applicable. So even though I no longer believe these official scientific narratives, if you will, or even stories, doesn't mean that I've gone in and just throw away all reason. I still try to use it and engage it. How do you? And I think I know your answer to this, but when applying the scientific method, do you use it for just about everything? You're on a daily basis.
Except my relationship. Except my relationship with my wife, it doesn't work when you're talking. I learned that from watching my mother. My mother was a very good student.
You don't want to test
she was more smart than my father, I bet, in terms of like how well she did in school and all that. She was really smart. My father was smart. He just wasn't as smart as my mother. But when sorry, my father's still alive. I don't think he'll be watching this, but when they would have an argument, oh my God. My mother, who was so smart, all logic would fly out the window. You know, I mean, like, whoa, these are like totally emotional, irrational arguments she's making. My father's trying to be rational. I saw, and this argument goes nowhere. This argument is, and I saw that, anytime a husband talks to a wife, and the husband wants to solve the problem. You ever read that book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus? It captures
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
yeah,
But
it's perfectly the nature of men versus women and how they interact with each other. But
here's
so I mean, yeah,
another one.
logic does not work. Scientific method does not work when I'm talking in a marriage.
I'm going to test out this hypothesis to see if my wife will
She does not want to solve the problem. She wants you to listen to her. You care about what she says. Okay, all right. Again, we're not solving the problem, right? Yeah. No, we're not solving. There's no problem to solve, Or you're not going to solve it anyway.
My calculations, if I ask my wife.
No, I was never that kind of nerdy, that's like a nerd. I was never a nerd. My thing was that I always was fascinated in learning new things. I mean, I look at myself. When I was young, I was a watcher, but I always wanted to learn new things.
Yeah.
I think, people talk about endorphins. You can get your chart. That's where I got my rush. It wasn't from drugs. I never really did drugs or alcohol even, or anything of stimulants. It was just learning new things. I'm addicted to it. And, going on Twitter or social media or even teaching was secondary to learning new things. I go teaching. My favorite thing was to bring new things into the classroom. So I tend to also find things that interest me. I don't know why something interests me. Usually they're obscure. In the past, they've been something just triggers my imagination and I start doing research. I've done that really ever since I was went to grad school, and to become a college professor. And then especially afterwards, I just kept on going and kept going and going after even I left the academia. But in social media, since I've been on social media since 2017, I always seem to go to the things that nobody else is talking about. It's like these blind spots just attract me. All of a sudden, like, why does nobody want to talk about that? And then I'll start digging. I say, "Whoa, there's a lot of very interesting stuff in going down in that hole, right?" And finding these things. And so I create these long threads, tying all these pieces together, which would challenge both sides of a story. Both the official story and, especially so, the people challenging the official story a lot of times. And I find that, nobody wants to go. No, I can't say nobody that is a leader, nobody that's a celebrity or somebody is, has some status within the truth movement, whatever truth movement it is, wants to go there. Reporters, journalists, do not want to go there. What I found, even though I guarantee you it's good. I mean, as an academic who built upon a life of having footnotes and I was known for overkill when it came to citations. I would have, instead of like 3 citations, like was the standard, I'd have 20 to support my point, because I researched it to death to be able to make a point. I wanted to be confident about that. So that's the way I go about. I mean, I can shoot from the hip. I'm usually pretty good at shooting from the hip. Like my ideas, my gut instinct, a lot of times takes me in the right direction. I've had good success with it as an engineer and an historian. But I still want to prove that point. I want to, and my standards on Twitter are lesser than as a, so I write articles. Sometimes I put on my website that are deeper for real dense subjects. But for the most part, I can shoot from the hip and hit and on Twitter and be confident that bring it on. I guarantee you for what I put on there, I have a double that amount of stuff waiting behind to come back with. If you want to, nobody challenges. Nobody, they don't. But a lot of people followed it and liked it and thought, oh, Nick, you're the expert. No, but, follow my lead here. And over time, it's been like 6 years, I built a large people who say, hey, they tell me, go to this guy. He knows. I mean, I get my name referenced all the time where people say, because I built a reputation of being, he's proved right. He doesn't, and he backs up and he tries to, it'll talk to you. You send me a reply or I respond back. I answer questions that are serious questions or people interested. So that's, as a teacher, and a researcher, that's what I do. But the thing is that I do get these, I said, these areas that nobody else wants to go. And that's right. That's what I love to do. And I can't remember what was the question that you had. That's what it gets me sometimes into this world where people on both sides want nothing to do with me. They ignore me. But there's a whole bunch of people there who can see there's some truth or some evidence to support what I'm saying.
Well, so we were talking about just, I guess, generally speaking about challenging consensus.
Okay, like scientific method.
And sometimes
Right.
Yeah, sometimes there'll be consensus within the quote unquote
Right.
truth community, and you can't even question them,
Right. No, that's the way it
because
is now.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I did tweet a lot about COVID from the day one, and I remember every day from like March of 2020 until really the Beirut blast happened in August 2020. Then I started doing a lot more stuff with other things. But even then, I continued with tweeting about COVID stuff every day. I contributed. I did some research on the laws about, whether they can take your job away from you if you refuse to do something. Like, I started researching what state laws. I published some stuff on that. But most of it, was I would just tweet people who were questioning the official story, which there were a lot of them, as you know. There are a lot of people from day one questioning. But I also, the thing you mentioned is that I noted from the time when I was doing 9/11 Truth and knowing what people would question 9/11, in March 2020, all these other people that I've been tweeting because they questioned 9/11 were not being, I didn't tweet them again because they never questioned COVID. It was like, oh, there'll be truth from this, but they're not going to switch. And you noticed this before another, too, like Webster Tarpley, who was this 9/11, maybe, but or something, and then the same thing happens. I do the Beirut blast and I start looking at this explosion there. And none of the people who did COVID and none of the people who did 9/11 went with me there. And now I'm all alone. I'm out, for the first time, I'm all alone. And now I'm doing my own research and I'm questioning the hell out of everybody. And it's a lot of people like it. They do, and they still like it. But, I have definitely challenged something that all the people on both sides of these big debates, the leaders, the celebrities don't want to go. And so the question of the scientific method, my scientific method we talked about last time was that I question, it's all about questioning. You question, then you dig for evidence and you keep questioning. You never accept you have the last answer. You're looking for the best answer that you can get at that time. You're looking for the strongest answer you can make from the evidence that you have. And that was really, I was taught that as a young age. That was a sign. I think my father, who was an engineer, taught me this kind of way of thinking. And I went as an engineer in college. I remember thinking that way. And as an engineer in professional world, as a professional engineer, that was the way I was a very good problem solver. And that's the way I did it. Question, ask learn as much as many people. Other people wouldn't put the energy in it that I would do to solve engineering problems. I really, I had my method, and method worked. It solved the problem, and I could solve it that other people wouldn't. They would give up or something, or they wouldn't have the right answer, but I could do it. And as an historian, I did the same thing. So I'm still doing that on social media, but the scientific method, the essence was questioning everything as much as you can, questioning everybody, not just other people, but yourself, and then digging for evidence and going with your gut. If you don't go with your gut, it takes forever. Your gut has to be pretty good. If your gut is bad, you got to depend on other people for your instinct. That may not work so well, but so I do that. But again, it's really hard because you come up with answers that nobody else wants to hear if they are leaders of some movement already. They're pre-existing. I'm like, the Kuhnian revolution. I'm like this weirdo, who comes in with a bright idea, which seems to explain things better. Well, how are we going to do him? We will shun him. We will ignore him. We'll put him in a little cubby hole, or pretty much just ignore you, right? They pretend they don't exist or whatever. Oh, I don't even know who you are. Okay, all right, whatever. But other people join in, but they're not leaders. They're not leaders. They're just people like interested in their say, hey, I like that. But will it happen? Now, I was mentioning at the beginning of the show is that there's something happening now. It's probably political, but I mean, because of the Gaza genocide going on, destruction of Gaza, I started doing things that were whenever I have a current topic, like a hot topic, I generally try to just bring an historical perspective to it. I'll bring stuff I've done and show like how this could help understand it without, say, taking sides really. Or, I mean, I'll tweet things that challenge the official story. And and so that means generally, challenging the New York Times and all the real pro-Israel, pro-Zionist media that's out there. And that's the official story. So I tweet a lot of stuff that's anti-Zionist, anti-Israel, or whatever the official story. But I don't trust that side any more necessarily than the official side. In fact, I started doing a lot of things where I was looking at some of the reports from Hamas, and the doctors there were saying certain kind of medical injuries that they were seeing. And I said, well, I'm familiar with those kind of medical injuries. Like they said, they found people where the skin was hanging from their fingers, was melting off their skin, or other people where they're having terrible, horrible burns on their arms and head, but not on the part their t-shirt was covering. And I don't know. So I'm very familiar with that too. I know that beta radiation. I know a lot of stuff about that kind of thing. And then, then there's some people who are turned to charcoal. There's nothing, and it's like 4th-degree burns. And well, I know about that too, because I've done a lot of research on all kind of, things, effects of explosives and nuclear radiation. But then I started thinking, they never show pictures of it. They're telling these people have these problems, but they never show pictures, and they keep adding something new each day. It's like, well, this could be like, just saying things to get sympathy for how horrible Israel is using some kind of modern weapon they don't understand it. And so I don't want to be used like that and just keep trying to figure out what people are talking about when I'd rather just back off and do my own thing rather than keep on jumping into a current thing that seems like I'm taking sides, but really all I'm just trying to do is understand, like the thing I was going to talk to you about, this translation, which I think I've already had it done, but I talked today. I tried to get somebody to do a Spanish translation of this guy, Felipe David, who was in the basement of World Trade Center 1 when that first plane hit there, and he ran up, and his description is that his skin was hanging from his fingers, his face was coming out, ears were like he was melting. And so a lot of people say, whoa, what the heck is that? That's not just normal fire. That's something. So I was trying to, he was only one interview with him in Spanish, and I was trying to figure out what actually he was saying happened to him. But, that's what I did. I said, look, description of people's skin melting, that's just like this Felipe David guy in 9/11. So I'm going to go dig and figure out what was going on there at 9/11. Right. That's what that'll attract my interest. Like now I can't figure out what's going on in Gaza because all I see is the doctor said that people's skin are melting. But let's look at this phenomena, skin melt. Fallujah. There's reports of skin melting in Fallujah in 2004. And what was that about too? There was a Bali bombing in 2002. There were people talking about skin melting. Oh, Hiroshima. There are pictures, graphic pictures of people whose skin is hanging from their fingers, and all kind of reports and poems about it, and kids' drawings of it. And so that's what I use, like, to get me interested. I'm going to go dig this up. I'm going to try and make sense of this whole phenomenon, regardless of what's happening in Gaza today. I don't know what's happening in terms of these medical conditions. All I know, the hospitals are destroyed. There's no medical service. Okay, yes, it's horrible, but I can't add to that. I don't know anything more about that. And so I do research on something that I can contribute to, that I do know something about. And if it's relevant today, great. That's fine with me.
Yeah. Again, there's just so many things and paths that we can take. And again, I just keep coming back to this, where how do you know you're getting closer to the truth, or you're straying away from it? That's what becomes a challenge. And
well, I tell you, as a historian, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I mentioned it towards the tail end of the last show I did, where pretty much all week long, and that's what inspired me to reach out to you, Dr. Bruce, was I had been going down
another rabbit hole,
the philosophical route, where I've always been intrigued by philosophy, but I've never really gone really deep. And I really started going down the Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, I thought. What did you say there? I was trying to write it down. Like the
universe has its rhythm.
Yeah,
and I'm vibing with it.
You know what? I did Latin in high school, the first 2 years in high school, and you could freely translate those old Latin things.
Yeah, well, that version,
Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, I mean, well, that translation that I listened to this week was on a YouTube channel that it's funny. The narrator's voice, he's like an older British gentleman, so he's like, he's got a nice narration voice, but he's reading the translation from using modern day language.
Oh, so like really, how recent is he? Like right now, or like a few years ago, decades ago?
No, the translation is from like right now.
Oh, really? Okay, he's modern,
like today's language. So literally, I could show that to my 16-year-old, and he would fully understand that translation of those
Whereas
texts.
I would be lost. I didn't know exactly what that translation. Oh
Yeah.
wait, vibing with it. Okay, I can get that. Vibing with it. Yeah.
Yeah, the universe has its rhythm, and I'm vibing with it.
I get that.
Like,
I can get that. That's cool.
yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't be cool
It's just,
anymore.
yeah, it's basically for younger folks. But I really, it resonated with me. I fully understood it. Some parts made me laugh because you hear this guy's voice, and you wouldn't think these are the words he normally uses. It, so he's just reading.
But it also sounds like Taoism, Taoism, follow the way. Taoism
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Chinese, the way, it's the way. And when I taught that to my students, it's like become one with the universe. The thing is not to think, is to go out in the field and look at the sky and watch the clouds and sort of meld yourself into that's the way to live life. And I said, that's cool. That's hippie
yeah.
way. But my student, oh, it's hippie. Yeah, it's a hippie way to do it.
Well, there's something to it, because I don't know why this week in particular. Maybe there wasn't really nothing. I always like to listen to things as I go to work. I've been working crazy hours
You
at
got
this job.
it. Last time you
Yeah,
did a good job, I remember.
yeah, it's insane. I mean, this last week wasn't too bad, but the week before I did 2 or 3 16-hour days in a row, and
Oh
I still
God.
have a 45-minute commute home. So
Oh
I'm
yeah.
up at 3 in the morning. I wasn't home till 10:30 at night. It's
That,
just
that wears you
ridiculous.
down.
Oh man, it wears the hell out of me out. But I think having that stressful week, I wanted to get into the philosophical mindset.
Yeah.
And Marcus Aurelius really was an intriguing character because I didn't know much about him. I had heard the name, but I didn't know much about him. Then you find out that at a young age he was elected emperor, and he took the office on the condition that he alongside his brother were allowed to take office, which is one of the very few rare times that was ever allowed to happen. And unlike many other Roman chronicles where disaster happens when two brothers take office, this was a great alliance. They got along just well. But the interesting thing about it is he wrote these meditations
Right.
on how to become a stoic, deeper into stoicism. And he wrote these ironically during times of war. I mean, pretty much from the only day that they weren't involved in war was the day they were elected as emperors, and every day after they were involved in some kind of conflict or another, or dealing through some violent pandemic that headed their way. So super interesting life that Marcus Aurelius lived. But then when you read his meditations, and then you take into consideration that he was probably the most powerful man in the known world at that point in time. And for him to write the stuff he was writing, like one of the spots that resonated with me was, if you're talking to someone that maybe intellectually isn't up to your level, you don't make that person feel any less. You
No,
talk down to their level and
that's what
and
I did.
help them understand. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And coming from someone that had all this power, and he openly realized, don't let that shit get to your head. Um, I think that's what his words resonated extra with me. It wasn't like someone that it was just a commoner or whatever. Which, I mean, they still would have been powerful words nonetheless. But I think it just gives it that extra uh, uh, of power to his words, knowing that he held so much power when he lived and wrote these things. Uh, what are your thoughts on the awesome Marcus Aurelius?
I don't remember. I mean, I took a philosophy class in college, and he was not one of the ones that was on that list. I ran
Yeah,
across him a few times in my sort of general research that I was doing, but um, I can't say I can add much. I can say in general, from the classic philosophers, like going back to Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. which I was more familiar with. That's usually where they start the
Yeah.
philosophy classes with those guys. And that, in fact, if you ever go to my website, I think is that on my Twitter?
Dr.
Anyway, at the very
Baird Online.
yeah, but at the top, I think they put this at the top of the Twitter account. Yeah, all right, at the top of my Twitter homepage,
Share
whatever
it.
they call it.
Share
Oh,
it
I don't. What
there.
do you mean I share it?
Yeah,
I can do that.
Yeah, you can go down to the middle little bar. It'll say present.
The middle little bar of what?
Down below on the StreamYard where we're at.
Oh, on the StreamYard. Okay, I got to go back to that again. All right.
Yeah, go to StreamYard and then
All right.
there's a little
Okay.
bar at the bottom.
Oh, present. I
and
see
then
it. Okay.
Yeah.
And now what? I just
present and then
how do I
choose the
find
page. Choose the
under
page
what?
that
Click
you want
slides
to
or
show.
video file or share screen? What is it? Under video file or slide screen?
It'll probably be your shared screen if you're showing your
Oh, I don't know
website.
the share screen. Anyway, there is a yeah, I'm not gonna. I might lose you. But if you go to my website or my my Twitter page, there is a very famous painting done by a French painter.
Oh, yeah.
And it's called
I've
Death
seen
of
it.
Socrates. And you can pull it up. You
Yeah.
probably pull it up better than me. Can you do that?
Yeah, I'll do that. Let me
All right.
pull it up.
You can go to my website, which is drbairdonline.com, or my Twitter page is twitter.com/drbairdonline.
Is that the one on your background picture there?
Yeah, the background picture.
Okay.
So you pull either one of those up. I could talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, let me put it up. Share screen.
Yeah, I'm a kind of a Luddite. There we go. Okay, so this is the death of Socrates. Socrates there in the middle with his hand pointing up, and this is before he's about to take the hemlock that he's going to kill himself. And now he's been arrested for corrupting the youth of Athens. Corrupting of course, everything we know about Socrates we learned from his student Plato. Plato tells us all the stories about him, but he's been accused of corrupting, and he voluntarily accepts that yes, he has indeed been corrupting the youth of Athens, and he accepts the punishment of death. And I think he had a choice. He could apologize for it, or he could accept death, and he chose death. Now I butchered the story. I don't remember exactly how Plato told the story, but and there is a sort of very proudly, going down with grace to his death. And everybody else is sad that he's doing this, wishing, no, just apologize, stop corrupting the youth of Athens. But to me, when I left teaching in 2017, the fall of 2017, and I decided I was going to go on social media because I thought that was the way. I thought at first I was going to attract the kind of students that I taught, that my audience would be former students. And a fellow teacher recommended I call myself Dr. Baird Online. I was always Dr. Baird in my high school because I had this PhD, but now I wasn't going to be Dr. Baird in person. I was going to be Dr. Baird Online. And so now I was going to, do that on everything, Twitter, webpage. But I said, well, I have to have a picture of some sort. And so I thought of, yes, that's a Socrates, because you know what? The last couple of years, I had been sort of accused of corrupting the youth of this high school with my 9/11 truth stuff and questioning. Oh, I was going to say the other thing I started. It's a really sad thing I taught about my Jewish students, but they would regularly every year bring in a Holocaust survivor, which is and they're very fascinating. And one of the afterwards to show the tattoo on their arm. They're always from Auschwitz, and they always had a tattoo on their arm. And it looked very similar, and I mean, you could look at the arm and it was like, well, this is very dramatic. And no way since, well, apparently a lot of those guys who were dead at the point, but they still brought a Holocaust survivor in each year. Unfortunately, the ones nowadays that they had didn't have tattoos on their arms, and they would make some reason and then at that point I knew enough about the Holocaust to wonder, oh, I'm not sure if this guy's BSing us. He's telling some pretty stuff. Maybe he was something, but I don't know if the other stories he's saying is true. And they also they're copying Elie Wiesel's Night. Actually, a lot of them, they told the same story. That was like anybody could read Elie Wiesel's Night, and they would have heard that story that the guy is telling now. The same stories that Elie Wiesel told at night. And so I wouldn't come out and write and say it, but I asked my students, so what do you think about that? And and then some of my fellow teachers were like, maybe we shouldn't bring those kind of guys. There's, I don't know if that's helping anything by Obviously they don't seem to be like the previous guys that we used to have in the past. But then again, I would, how could I address that without denying the Holocaust, right? How can you question these people bringing in and say there maybe are not Holocaust survivors? I don't know. So I was corrupting the youth of my high school by even asking questions. Like I couldn't even ask questions. I would I couldn't help myself. Some little question or some little thing, or put a poster in my room. I had this wonderful poster I loved, which I had this student said, as children, we are taught to ask questions. As adults, we are told not to. And there's this young girl asking, and the second print is a picture of the Twin Towers. So obviously that's the thing we're not allowed to ask questions about. Adults, we can't ask questions. And the head of the high school came in, heard about it somehow, and he went right to the picture and he had me take it down. I said, "Oh my God, really? Seriously? You got to take down the picture?" But so I was like Socrates. But I accepted my fate. I was, I was guilty of corrupting the youth by the rules of our society and our laws. But what? I accept my punishment. I'm going to gracefully retire. I'm not going to kill myself, but I'm going to gracefully retire and go on social media and fight like hell, to challenge everything they believe in. And I hope they regret the day. They rue the day that they. Yeah. I mean, because it's going to be a lot more.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, I'm a very naturally inquisitive person. I've always been that way. If something didn't make sense in my little head, it doesn't matter if I was 5 years old, I'd ask questions. Why this? Why that? Why this? Why that?
Why is this guy blue?
Yeah, I've always been like that. And, when I was young and questioned some religious leanings that I had, don't talk about that, son. That's Satan using you. I'm like, I'm just asking questions.
Right.
How
does Santa Claus do that? Like, how can he get protected?
Yeah, I'd have all of these weird questions. Like I remember, I mentioned this last week when I was speaking with Marcus. Is that
Marcus Aurelius?
No.
Marcus. Okay.
Marcus Cage. We spoke a little bit of Marcus Aurelius, but we were, he's African American, I'm Mexican American. We were talking about Jewish folks, and my first interactions living in LA was when I first met Jewish folks. To me, it was all in my little 6-year-old mind. This is not me today with my understanding of how things work. This is just my little 6-year-old mind. I had a little white friend named Dilo. And to me, it wasn't weird that he was Jewish or nothing. To me, it was weird that he didn't believe in Jesus. Oh, yeah. In my 6-year-old mind, everyone believes in Jesus. Right. And I remember I used to hang out at his house. And his mom's was, a white redhead lady that showed me how to spin the dreidel, things along those lines. That was my early childhood interactions with Jewish folks. It was just a religion that didn't believe in Jesus, which was weird as hell to me as a little kid. My mind couldn't comprehend any different, That's just weird. Everyone believes in Jesus. Everyone does. How the hell can you not? So in my little limited mindset, that's what it was. And as I got older, and I remember people talking about anti-Semitism and bigotry, like, that's just weird. It's just a religious belief. Who cares if someone shits on that? Everyone can believe what they want. And if people want to criticize it, you should be able to criticize it. Yeah. And nope, that's racism. What? How the hell is that racist? These are white folks. Like, it made no sense in my mind. Like, I'm like, no, man. They're not going to get pulled over and beat because of a religious belief, man. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't registering with me as a young, even teenager. And I remember going over the Holocaust history in school, and I believe the official narrative, but I would always ask these questions in my head. I'm like, it's just weird. If 6 million people died, why, when the Nazis came by, why didn't they just say, oh, no, I'm not Jewish. I'm a German. I'm a white person. Nothing to see here, folks. They're like, no, it's because some people died for their faith. That's what I was told. Like, 6 million people did that? Like, Damn, I
But
would have faked it. Even if I really believed in my faith, I would have faked it to survive another day.
you
You know
know
what I'm
the
saying?
adore the saints, all those saint stories growing up. You grew up with those?
Yeah.
For
Oh,
those who
I heard all
sacrificed
that
their
stuff. Well,
yeah.
and I read Mein Kampf, Hitler's book. Even he even talks about how it was hard to tell a Jew from a German.
Mixed. They were
Even
mixed.
Hitler is writing about this shit.
Mm.
So my young teenage skepticism on this bigotry and anti-Semitism, I mean, goes back as far as I can remember. It's just it's never made any sense to me. It never any logical using reason, any of that stuff. It's never sat well with me. I don't get it. And then I see what's going on with the Palestinian issue and the stuff. I see some white folks angry with some brown folks because they feel entitled to that land based on what evidence? Oh, because
The Bible says.
Bible says so? That's your fucking evidence? Excuse my language?
Although the
It's
true
the most it's the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. Well, the Bible says I can do this, so I have every right to do that to you. Really? That and people go along with this. It's complete lunacy in my mind.
although the Torah Jews, they say, that's bull BS, that's the Zionism, the whole claim they
Yeah.
have to that land that you do not, the Torah says you do not have a claim to that land. You should be spread out through the world. That's what should happen.
Yeah, there's many, and that's the other thing. Like that's what I brought up earlier, when people try to say if you're anti-Zionist, you're a racist and a bigot. I'm like, no, it's a political ideology. There are plenty of Jews that are anti-Zionist and speak out against the dangerous and violent political ideology that is Zionism. There's plenty of examples. Just put in anti-Zionist Jews on any search engine, and you can find tons and tons and tons of examples of Jewish folks that are not in line with this. The problem is, it is a dangerous movement that has infiltrated not only the whole of Israel, but infiltrated, I would argue, American politics. I posted a video, shockingly, from MSNBC, where this anchor is going down by down of all the billions and billions of dollars that we have sent to Israel pretty much since World War II. And I've also heard people say, well, there's a reason why it's called the State of Israel. If you pay attention, it's just another American state.
Oh yeah,
being funded. So there's so much to it, but as soon as you even start dipping your toes into this, you get ostracized, you get cast out. You're just you're a hateful person towards a race of people. It's to me, it reminds me of being a kid. Whenever someone told you not to do this or don't think this way, like when I was told not to have these religious questions because Satan was using me, I'd have more questions. Wait a minute. And so when people are told not to look into certain things or not to go down certain rabbit holes, inquisitive people like myself are gonna even go even deeper and okay, why don't you want me to see this? What are you hiding? I mean, the same thing happened during the COVID era. Why are you giving me a Twinkie for your shots and wanting me to take this so bad? You know, whenever you have these cases of censorship where people want to silence you or have you keep your own thoughts to yourself, I think it backfires. People are just going to research the hell out of something and dig out the real skeletons of in the closets, for the people that wanting to hide all this stuff. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Bruce?
Well, I think the kind of people who follow me are just like the ones you described. They're looking, they don't believe any side in these debates, and they see what I do as based on evidence that I present right up front. I just don't have a tweet where I say some, meme or something. I go in and I lay out threads. People don't do this very much on Twitter, but my thing. I mean, I could put it on my website if anybody actually read my website, which they don't. I put something really deep.
I have.
Okay, whatever. Most people wouldn't go there. I don't get any feedback from that. But on my tweets, I have threads. And this one I just finished today, it was like over 100 tweets. I have not, as far as I know, I've never been messed with Twitter in terms of like deleting.
I think you've been shadow banned, Dr. Bruce.
The what?
I think you have been throttled or shadow banned.
Oh, I've definitely been throttled. That I know.
Because
and I try to find ways to do that.
Prior, I would get your post all the time. It would just come up into my feed.
Right.
Lately, like I had forgot. I was like, shit, what has Dr. Bruce been up to? And I have to physically go into your profile to see your latest and recent posts. I have to physically do it because otherwise it doesn't show up.
Even though I might have like, 50 tweets in that day, it might not show up in anybody's feed. Yeah, and I know the same thing on my feed. I like the one that says for you. If I do the people followers, it's crap. It's like nothing useful. But the for you, which their algorithm picks, sometimes it has a lot of the celebrities, rather than people who follow me, but a lot of edgy people who will question the official story. Sometimes I'll see something interesting on the for you section, and so I'll tweet that. But I know that I am very throttled. I know that because I use techniques to try to get around it, which tend to work. I mean, if I can get somebody else, tweeting it who has more as a following, then all of a sudden they can just take off until that point. But I've also noticed ups and downs. Like back in 2020, at the time of that of the Beirut blast, I was like very popular. I mean, the biggest, my things would go viral, at least the lead tweet of a thread. And I have one it's still being issued today. One from January 2019 that went viral back then. It was simply a video of an explosion in Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, that showed this horrendous blast. And I summarized the Veterans Today article, which the guy suggested it was a neutron bomb, and it was dropped by an Israeli jet. And it's just a very simple little thing, but it went viral back then. For some reason, somebody big shot tweeted it, and then everybody else. And this last weekend and the preceding week, like it started getting recirculated all over again. And then when somebody the Middle East Eye, some of these news outlets are tweeting this tweet of mine from January 2019, which is not the most. I mean, I learned a lot. I didn't know anything about the subject back in January 2019, but for whatever reason, it resonated. And those ones, whenever I retweet that or somebody else tweets it, it just goes boom again, boom. And especially now, this with the Gaza agenda, all of a sudden, like, bam, these things that I did years ago are like taken off again. Like, what the hell is happening? Am I not being throttled now, or what is going on? Is it just so popular now that it wasn't, 2 weeks ago or whatever? So what happens? I don't know, but I don't care. Honest to God, really, with how Twitter works. If there was an alternative, I would love it. If there was some place that I could put my stuff, yeah. To me, I see that all like you're a community. We're a community. I follow back. I don't follow anybody. Just follows me because a lot of times I get like porn stars and stuff like that. But anybody who likes or retweets something that's edgy, that is something that that's not just a simple support of this or that, but somebody who's like supporting a tweet that would just really make crossing a line, like doing two things at the same time. I like those kind of tweets, right?
Yeah.
And if somebody likes or retweets one of those, I'll follow all those people, and they usually follow me back. So that's the way I actually built I was widely following people way back when, but now I'm much more selective. I don't have the patience for doing that, but I still, you're part of the community. I bet you you're part of the community of people who want to be part of this. But yeah, there are people I used to see, they were interacting with me a lot 6 years ago, 5 years ago. They changed 4, 3, 2. Now there's a whole bunch of new people, but that's great. Like right now it's hot. Like right now, like whatever, it's something. And I do these things which are very controversial. I know they're controversial because nobody else does them. Okay. I know I have this line. I told you these things where I'm kind of challenging all sides of a debate. And I find these topics that generally even talk show people, I'll go on them one time because they saw a tweet of mine and get me on there and realize, yeah, he's a little beyond that. He's going to, especially when you get to the point where you're questioning their group, are members of the group. When they're part of a group, you have a group. That means you can't really challenge anybody in that group, who be part of that cohort of people associated with, say, that podcast. Or I don't know if you have a cohort or group or whatever, but I will go on, and I don't even know who's the part of this group, but I'll start, questioning somebody's, oh, well, you can't do that. That's one of our friends. Oh, okay, whatever, But on Twitter, I do. I'm not really pick fights. I ignore political battles and reporters arguing about this and that and accusing people. I don't care about that kind of stuff. But still, I step on people's toes, and so they choose to ignore me. Just flat out pretend that I don't exist. They do that in conversation. Who is this? I don't know this. What is this person? They block me, but they don't know who I exist. Okay, whatever. But I'm a community. I follow. I think 40,000 people follow me. Like 43,000 people and 40,000 I follow back. They're part of this community of people, and I over time weeded out anybody who doesn't really feel that way about questioning these things. And so there is a bunch of people, but they don't see my things unless they go looking for it, and they don't go looking for it unless somebody else tweets it. All right. And then all of a sudden if somebody has some, some following, a large following, it might just take off from just their followers. They're not as throttled as I am. That's it. It's fine. If it leads to interaction, interesting interaction, I'm fine with it. People want to ask me questions, great. I respond back to them. If people want to do something interesting or just say something related to it, I will retweet them. I get it out there as much as I can, and I retweet a lot because every time I retweet something, I get action. After that, boom, a long pause until I retweet it again. So that's the way they throttle me. You have to retweet. I shouldn't say that. They probably are listening and want to know how I get around them. But it's a game, and I don't mind playing it for a while. If it's fun. If I'm getting interaction as a result of it. But the thing I do that is the most edgy is that I've done a lot of threads where I studied some terrorist incident that happens. And when I start digging deeper and deeper, I find these patterns. And they generally come down to the ones I pick, end up with the conclusion that nuclear devices were used. And I've done a lot of research trying to show, well, how can you have nuclear device? Where's the radiation? I said, well, they obviously don't want you to understand how third generation nukes that they've been working on really since the 50s, to make nukes that are cleaner and smaller, and how they developed and used to be mainstream news. And then after the 1980s, it stopped being mainstream news. They wouldn't talk about it anymore. And there's a lot of stuff declassified about earlier things that you can read. It's available online. So you can learn a lot about what's declassified and what was on mainstream media before the 80s and that's when they're doing all these things, right? Did they disappear? Do they not have them anymore? Because they could be quite useful for a terrorist who wants to create a huge boom that creates a big crater or makes a big blast without having anybody certain, is that a nuke? Because it's sure making a big boom. Oh, ammonium nitrate could do that. Oh, a truck bomb can do that. Oh, no, no, it can't. They don't want you to know that. So I tried. Yes, you're right. They're bull. That's bull. They cannot do that. So what's the other story? I dig deep, 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 and I find a pattern where it usually comes down to when I have means and I have opportunity. It's just a question of motive, and it comes down to who is doing this, and it comes down to pointing the finger at Israel. Okay. Now, I don't say anything about Zionism. I don't have to say anything about Zionism. I don't say anything about Jews or anything like that. I'm just saying Israel. I don't say Mossad even. I said Israel is engaged in this massive campaign. They've been doing it now since the World War II era. The King David Hotel is something they take great pride in the fact when every now they actually honor the martyrs who did some massive killing of something like that, right? And so they do these things openly, and they do a lot of stuff in your face. They really don't care. They take great pride in being terrorists and doing these things. And yet you can't accuse them of doing the same thing because you're anti-Semite if you do. But I don't get any trouble. Nobody accuses me of being anti-Semite because I tweet this stuff about Israel doing stuff. And it's very edgy. And it came up very recently because, there is a groundswell of support for Gaza, right? For very good reasons, right? I mean, for how many years? 75 years. Since the Nakba, they've been, treated like not like they say, like animals. They've been huddled in places and can't and denied stuff, and it's awful,
Well,
right? You
they
study the history of it.
routinely say they're mowing the lawn when they're going to
Right,
go on
and
these
they're very
bombing
graphic
campaigns.
about what they want to. Well, they don't quite mean that. Yeah, they do. They think of us. They shouldn't exist, right? Okay. And I've been to Israel. I know I can see that attitude. And I was there in the early '80s when they could still walk through all parts. There was no separate wall, or I go into the areas where Arabs lived and areas where the Jews lived, and walk in and I saw the different different worlds that they lived in even back then. So, but anyway, I do this and I realize here are all these people who want to point out all the evil things that Israel has done with the Palestinians. They want to really go after because they want to stop this. They want to end this war. They want to give the Palestinians their state or give them equal rights or something. And we're gonna really clobber home for the umpteenth time how awful Israel has been to the Palestinians and how awful they're being now. And I said, I remember there was this guy, Alan Zabrowski. I don't know if you know him. He's the one who, anyway, he was in the Marines, and he was the teacher at West Point, or no, whatever, Marine Academy, whatever that was. And he came out accusing the Israel of carrying out 9/11. And he made a big splash back in the 2010 or so of doing that. But he said, if you're going to try to solve the Zionist problem, and the key to Zionist problem is going to be in the heartland of America. And it's going to be like 9/11, right? Looking at what they did. And I said, well, it's a lot, let's play that even further. If you want to bring it home to people, bring it home to them, everything that they have done to every people all around the world, because you can categorize all of these attacks on people with these modern nuclear devices. It's happened all over the world. It's happened in the United States, 9/11, 1993 World Trade Center, Oklahoma City, the Marines in 1983 in Beirut, the embassy in Beirut in 1983. Over and over again, you can find evidence that people should be asking questions about what Israel has done, and there's good evidence to point there. But those people who want to do everything they possibly could to stop this killing of Gazans will not go there. They will not touch that. Why do they not touch things? Why they want to talk about USS Liberty? People talk about USS Liberty. Valid reason. You're killed like 79 guys, on a NSA ship there in the, during the 67 war. Well, yeah, that's awful. And they delivered. And yes, they said it was an accident. No, it wasn't an accident. We all know it. But will they talk about what happened to the Marines, those 241 Marines in 1983? They will not. Why?
What about the Levant affair?
Yeah, well, that Israel admitted to, so that's okay to talk about that, apparently, when they honor the people who did that. But does that matter? Because when you do it, there's a time, there's sort of like a, what do they call it? Time limitation? What do they call that on the laws?
Statute
of limitations. After about 100 years, you can talk about something that happens. Like
kind of like Pfizer wanting to release their documents for like 75 years.
Yeah, hold on to it. And maybe we'll get all the case stuff in 100 years, and we'll see what that was about. But I mean, it's like but they don't care. It's in your face. They can honor those, Levant affair martyrs, or whoever was involved as heroes, because they're proud of it. But they can't say it. They what does the Mossad say? By deceit. We're going to fight war by deceit. We're not going to go at you. They're not really great at going head to head in battle with somebody, but they're really good at these things that they can plausibly deny that they did it. Right. So,
what's funny to me is when you and I bring up these Israeli atrocities, and I want to preface what I'm about to say with, if you haven't realized by now, there's a huge difference between criticizing the Israeli regime and the actual regular Israelis that just go about their lives.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the actual goddamn regime, the Zionist-led regime.
And they are organized. They're a crime syndicate.
It's a freaking mafia.
It is.
And
they have always been.
Are everywhere, whether it's 9/11, and people don't want to talk about that. Same thing with Saudi Arabia. And we just gave some examples of the USS Liberty, the Levant affair, the Balfour Declaration. Would you mind, if you can, synthesizing what the Balfour Declaration was all about, and who some of these players involved that if you bring up today, you're like, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist. Really? Well,
Well,
there's historical backing for
I
this
would bring
shit.
it up in my class every year. It's a very interesting document. It's very short. If you could pull it
Yeah.
up, can you pull that up? The
Yeah.
Balfour Declaration. It's a
Mm,
handwritten thing. No, it's typed. Sorry, it's typewritten in a kind of old-fashioned typewriter. And it's a very simple document. But if you read this to my students every year, I would read it word for word. So I'm very familiar with it. I can wing it if you can't bring it up. But you can find
yeah,
the original document.
I'm pulling it up.
It's like 2
here.
paragraphs or whatever.
All these things are coming up.
But it says one thing too, but they didn't keep the end of the bargain. But also the experience of the British there in Palestine, which it was called Palestine at the time when the British occupied it, was it wasn't easy for them. It was pretty horrendous for the British soldiers that were there.
There we go, right there.
Okay, so this is a copy of it, or a computer thing. Can you blow it up a little bit? I can read it. So say a little bit. So this is it's a document. It's from the Foreign Office in Britain, Great Britain, and it's signed in 1917, November 2nd, 1917. It's signed by James Balfour, who was the Foreign Secretary at the British government in 1917 during World War I. And it's written to Lord Rothschild. Now, Lord Rothschild was the leading Zionist. He's related. I mean, he's part of the Rothschild family, but he was a leading Zionist, British Zionist. So he's part of this whole thing where the Zionists at the time, as they had back, for back to the 1800s, had wanted a homeland for the Jews, and they had singled out the Palestine as a place that they wanted this homeland for the Jews. And so the British government are saying, and this is Lord Balfour for the British government, he said, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, my eyeglasses are short here, and conveying to you on behalf of His Majesty's government the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the cabinet. So it was approved by the British cabinet. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object. It being, now here's the added on parts of it, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. So that's, supposed to be part of it, kind of got ignored. Or the other part ignored, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country too. So there was a lot of thought that if the Jews got a homeland, or what they call it, a national home there, that Jews in other countries would be forced to leave those countries. In fact, which there's a lot of controversy about what actually happened after the creation of the state of Israel, but there were Jews who left in large numbers after the creation of the state of Israel from other Middle Eastern countries. And some people said that they were Zionists there who were orchestrating that, pressuring or scaring those people into leaving their country. Because otherwise the Jews had good relations in all of the Middle East up until the creation of the state of Israel, and had mixed societies that were very successful, but then things didn't work out so well after the creation of the state of Israel. And anyway, you should be grateful if you point this out to the other members of the Zionist Federation, which is what the organization was called. Yours sincerely, Arthur James Balfour. So that was the thing. Was that what that did was it made one of the goals of World War I. They're going to have to do a peace treaty with the Central Powers. Britain is one of the allies, along with the United States. Although the United States is just entered the war. I think they haven't really gotten engaged in much fighting at this point. This is done. It's mostly been the French and the British, and then on the other side, the Russians who had pulled out but mostly British and French on the Western Front. And they dedicated themselves to making this a goal for the peace treaty. We're going to make this part of the peace treaty when we defeat the British. Defeat the Germans eventually, and the Austrians and the Italians. I can't remember. But the British, the Germans, and the Austrians. That then we will make way for a home for the Jews in the homeland, in the Holy Land. So what happened when the when the peace treaty was signed, it wasn't really that was a part of that on the Treaty of Versailles or any of the other peace treaties. But what it did was they established a mandate. The British had a mandate in Palestine, and also what will become Jordan. That was a British mandate. The French got what was Syria and Lebanon, and during there was a large influx of Jews that started moving into the homeland because the British were more open. The Ottoman Empire that ruled the area had not been really open to the Jews. They started coming there in the late 1890s. They started immigrating in larger numbers, but under the British rule, larger numbers started coming in there, and there was some resistance. There were a lot of the Jews. A lot of times they had money or supporters from the Zionist Federation that would provide them money so they could buy land from the Palestinians who were a lot. There's a very successful society, very mixed society, Jews, Christians, and Muslims all living there. Palestinians were, and the people that were there were Arabs for the most part, but they were Arab Christians, Arab Muslims, and then the Jews were sort of separate, but they were also part of the same mix. There was big tensions in the 30s. There was riots, and the British then started saying enough is enough. Well, no more Jews. You're just causing stir. It's going to cause a riot there. We're having trouble ruling over these people. The Jews were very aggressive, and they were like terrorist attacks on these Arab, and sometimes the Arabs would retaliate too. So it was fighting going both ways. But the Zionists did not like the fact the British had cut off the flow, and so they started dedicating themselves to kind of, trying to force their way into the Holy Land. During World War II, a lot of things went on hiatus, but immediately after the war was over, they started flooding in large numbers, and things started getting really heated. The British, the Jews were attacking the British soldiers, killing British soldiers. So it was really the British said, like this, we're out of here, and then the minute the British left, like the day the British left, the leading Jews like David Ben Gurion, who was sort of the leader, one of the leaders, Chaim Weizmann, another leader, but David Ben Gurion chose the name Israel for this new state. They got that. That was like the day the British left. That's where they came to the new state, and then like the next day, the other Arab states all around attacked Israel, and there was a war, and then ever since then, it's like Israel was allowed into the United Nations and became a real state in the world. But a lot of tensions continuing to the present between the Arab states and the Arabs living in the land. But it goes back toward the Balfour Declaration was sort of the opening of it. The British mandate allowed them to orchestrate the Balfour. I think the Balfour Declaration became part of the British mandate over Palestine. So they pledged themselves to carry that out while they were ruling over that area before they left in like 1948. And that's enough of that history stuff. Oh, I can't hear you now.
Whoops, I muted myself. No, it's interesting stuff, and I want to, I guess, along the similar lines. I mean, I mentioned that show that was aired on MSNBC of all places, where they're going dollar for dollar what's happening there. Let me share that with you. You can see that, right?
I see a video. American citizens and our future children are enslaved to Israel.
U.S. foreign assistance since World War II. Now, so far, Israel has racked up a total of approximately $142.3 billion in aid. Just to give you the scope of how much this is annually, Israel received $3.2 billion in aid in the fiscal year 2017 alone. In 2016, the United States formally signed a foreign aid agreement with Israel. It's the largest aid package in American history. It requires the United States to send $38 billion in military aid to Israel over a 10-year period, and it prohibits any future president from withdrawing from the agreement until 2026. Just cumulative recipient of U.S. foreign assistance since World War II. Now, so far, Israel has racked up a total of
All right, so it's playing all over again. Fascinating shit. I mean,
yeah, I don't know if people care about now with our budget deficit, the national debt's like what is billions?
But I think
Ukraine.
what it
How many
shows
billions we
is
got to Ukraine too? And I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
Numbers
I,
boggle the mind.
I think what it shows though is the level of commitment already made with the Israeli regime, um, and it's very very curious how both sides of the aisle cow kowtow to Israel. And I guess the fascinating thing lately has been a lot of these people that were a lot of them that were like, no, I'm a truther. I'm a truther. All of a sudden, you see them. I support Israel 100%.
Yeah.
They were against Ukraine, but now when it
Really?
comes to
But they're for
Israel,
Israel.
now they're for Israel.
Well, I know that's
I'm
where it comes
like,
down to it. You'll find this
it's
out.
so mind-boggling.
That's a
It's so
line you can't
mind-boggling.
cross because, like you said, there are these. I remember there was a guy, Lucas Gage. Do you know him? He's another bald-headed guy, ex-Marine. Anyway, he's
Yeah.
he's popular on Twitter now, but he's been very aggressive going after, this whole issue, and he, it talks about that there are these people who you might agree with on a lot of issues, but when it comes to Israel, all of a sudden they gang up on you. You can't cross a certain line. You think they are the anti-Zionist Jews. Oh, but don't go that far. In fact, I learned this too. Anti-Zionist Jews will criticize Israel only so far. Anything that points a finger of them doing something that's untoward, like something that fits into the elders of Zion, like something a conspiracy-minded person might say, no, that's anti-Semitic. Anything you would say that doesn't cross their little line of criticizing, they want you control. There's a guy named Gilad Osman. I don't know if you're familiar. I met him and but he is an Israeli who left Israel, renounced his citizenship there. He's a saxophonist. Anyway, it's pretty well known. But he would say the Jews will control any truth organization. Any organization that challenges official stories will be controlled by Jews. That's just the way they do it. They allow that if they control it. They will allow that truth. They will allow that challenge to Israel. They will allow this and that only if they are the ones who pull the strings on it. You can join it if you're not Jewish. That's fine. They control it. They will. And he told me, he said, he would say, I said, well, what, 9/11? Because I don't remember that. He said, well, maybe he didn't know about 9/11. But, it's like, look at all these other movements where people you think they are on your side. You think they're on, but, you cross that line. And so this is not me. This is him saying these. He does it very publicly, very openly. He says this kind of thing. There's probably some truth to that,
You know the funniest thing of when when Kanye West got canceled.
Yeah.
He was like, you can't criticize the Jews because you'll get canceled. And then what happened?
He criticized the Jews.
Yeah. He got canceled.
I haven't heard too much from him yet.
Essentially proving his damn point. I mean, it was one of the funniest things that I had ever seen. I mean, everything he had said would happen came to happen.
I'm too rich. I'm too powerful for them to do that to me.
Yeah.
He did that.
I saw something. Vanessa Beeley. Are you familiar with her work?
Oh, yeah.
Vanessa Beeley is a very well-known journalist. Used to be widely respected by everyone in the business. Until when? Until she became a whistleblower on a lot of the Middle East shenanigans happening. And I follow her on Twitter. I would love to have her on sometime. I'm definitely gonna be going for her. But she's been covering the whole Israeli-Palestine issue for
actually Syria. She's always
like a hawk. Yeah, Syria. She's covered Yemen, the atrocities going on in Yemen.
Oh yeah, Yemen too.
Yemen, the genocide happening in Yemen has been going on for goddamn nearly a decade, maybe even more.
Yeah.
And it's a small country, rich in oil. The Saudis are running out of oil, so They've been waging this modern day war and attack on Yemen with their fighter pilot package that they got from $100 million package from Donald Trump, and then supplemented subsequently by the Biden administration. So both administrations were funding the Saudi Arabians against poor little Yemen, and not a peep in the news anywhere, no one talking about it. A real genocide happening, except for a few brave reporters such as Vanessa Beeley. And Vanessa Beeley has been very, very outspoken in the Israeli regime tactics, bombing paramedics, bombing hospitals, and these latest ones that you've heard about are just the tip of the iceberg. They've been bombing the shit out of hospitals for many years, but no one's ever talked about it. No one's ever covered it. It's only now getting exposed. And so Vanessa Beeley is one of these voices that has been very, very loud, speaking out against all this nonsense happening. And she made a post where she was equating Zionism to the Nazi regime. And it was a very, very, very clever post. And I saw someone, to me, it was a white lady. She looked like a white lady, last name Rosenthal. And her comment on that Twitter thread was, "This is anti-Semitic." I couldn't help but laugh. I'm like, instead of debunking or explaining why this is anti-Semitic, when if you've been following the whole damn thing, you would understand the meme of it. You would understand the similarities. One of the things the Nazis first did when they took power was what? Censorship.
Oh yeah, immediately.
And given the fact that we can't even criticize the ideological position of Zionism, flat out censorship, that is very Nazi-like behavior, which is very ironic. And so this lady sees a post that she doesn't like. This is anti-Semitic. It's a freaking joke in the state of affairs that we are living in, where we can't talk about this, we can't talk about that, even though it has nothing to do with bigotry or anti-Semitism at all. But you just can't talk about it. It's been weaponized.
It's pertinent what you're talking about, Vanessa Beeley. I talked earlier about that tweet from January 2019 that's like gone viral again. It shows a picture of this tremendous, horrible blast explosion there in Sana'a, the capital there of Yemen, in May of 2015. That's when it happened. And I quoted the Veterans Day article that suggested it was a neutron bomb, a nuclear bomb of some sort. And so I'd done this, and I'd done a lot of research also on Yemen. There was another huge blast in April, the previous month, and there's videos of that too. So I have all this research that I'd done. But one day I was on, following some thread, and there's Vanessa Beeley. And she was responding to somebody and talking about how she had been in Sana'a with Chris Busby, who's a very famous for studying areas where depleted uranium, enriched uranium evidence, like in Iraq. They did a lot of studies of birth defects, traded maybe it's the way the Americans had used depleted uranium there in Fallujah and other places there and during that war. And she said she and Chris Busby went to the hospital there in Sana'a to check for reported evidence of radiation injuries that, where people had been reported as having injuries from radiation. Okay, that sounds very interesting to me. So I replied back to her. It was a tweet, right? And I replied back to her. I said, "Whoa, I'd love to have more information on that. What did you discover? Did you guys ever publish a report on this? Because there's evidence that thing there was some kind of nuclear bomb there. So it'd be wonderful to know what you find in there." She never responded. I've tweeted her again a few times whenever it's come up as something or it's come up in conversations that she still never responded. There are a lot of other people associated with her who follow me or whatever, but nobody responds. They won't tell me what the hell was in those hospitals there. These things happen in these Arab countries. They don't tell you what's happened in Gaza. You hear these little, blurbs or something, or they have pictures of they don't tell you either. This is something they don't want knowledge out there official now. How long is it going to take before there's official stories about, like, say, what I did a lot on Beirut blast? There's still not been an official report on. We're still doing it with things that were said back on August of 2020 in terms of the official story. And they were just some anonymous person somewhere said something and it became the official story. They'd never done a study there. People there, we want an investigation. We want an investigation in Beirut for that. So it's not just the mainstream media that controls access to information. It's like everybody in the governments all around the world, in all the media everywhere around the world, alternative or legacy or whatever, they don't give us information to figure out what happened in these things too. So you have to decipher it yourself by looking at things like craters or videos of explosions or everything. I put together pieces of something because there's something they want to hide. There's something everybody wants to hide. They don't want this information out there, regardless, like I said, of what's happening in Gaza, what Israel done in the past that's even more awful than what, that would resonate with people around the world that happened to their own peoples. They don't want people to know this. They don't want to talk about these things, so that they kind of are there, but they're never really become part of the mainstream or a way of people thinking about what has happened. Like Yemen disappeared. It's disappeared. Historically it's there, but what's happening in Yemen today? Who knows what's happening in Yemen today? Oh, they attacked Israel. Okay, all of a sudden now they're in the news again. Or did they attack? What do we have? Where are we hearing this information? I don't know where this information is coming. Those are the information I kind of avoid. I do historical stuff because I don't know what the hell's going on over there. I don't trust anybody reporting on it. Yeah, it's like wonderful in the day when they had people, you say, I trust that person reporting. Oh, I'm sorry. It's hard. I don't trust anybody. I don't.
Really the only people that I've been following closely is Ryan Christian of The Last American Vagabond and Vanessa Beeley. I think they do excellent work, and they've been talking about this for many years. So it's not like they just hopped on the bandwagon.
I was on The Last American Vagabond probably a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I saw that. I've had him on. He's such a straight shooter, man.
I was there the next morning for some kind of morning show that he was on, so I actually talked to him 2 times. And but there was a line for him too, and that is, there's a group of people that they were aligned and they protect those people. You cannot question any one of those people within this group because that's counterproductive. And so I learned that's fine. Okay. I don't have to go after, I don't talk about anybody. I just focus on evidence. But if your evidence is something which is contrary to what one of those people has been known for or has said many, many times over the years, it's hard to break that into that area. I mean, it'd be hard for me to ask Vanessa Beeley what the hell happened in that hospital. I don't think I'd ever hear, I would ever know what happened in that hospital. Or,
have you seen Vanessa Beeley's work on the white helmets?
Oh yeah, that's where I started. Because I remember this is the response I had. I loved the work on the white helmets. I believed everything. I was bullshit about what they were saying, what Bellingcat and all those other people are doing with Syria. So that's where I kind of got into Twitter in the first place. And I was seeing all that. And that's why I was so shocked when here comes this huge monstrous explosion in Beirut on August 4th, 2020. I'm thinking, for sure, all those people went after Bellingcat and Syria. All those people who said BS on the chemical weapons thing, BS on this, but they're surely going to get involved in this thing here. No. Bellingcat established a part of the official story. None of them challenged Bellingcat on Lebanon. None of them challenged Bellingcat on Syria, fine. Whatever, chemical weapons, fine. What happened there was sure less like a nuke in Beirut. And hey, Bellingcat saying, no, you can't say it's a nuke. Do these journalists say, well, let's ask a question. Bellingcat says that probably going to say it's BS, it's a lie. They did not. And that's when I started using the phrase so-called alternative media, #scam. Because where are these people questioning anything? Where's the journalists are questioning the story, which is so full of holes that I could keep poking holes in it forever and ever, and none of them will touch it.
That, and I wonder if sometimes it's done. I'm sure sometimes it's done purposely. Like, we're not going to.
It's too dangerous. You're never going to fix that issue.
Yeah. And maybe there's other times where people really believe that alternative way of thinking is complete bullshit. And let me give you an example, Dr. Bruce Baird. I had James James Corbett on the show a couple
who
of
I
weeks
started
ago.
with too, right? I mean, that
I
was my
freaking
introduction. I trusted. He was go to anything when he
Yeah,
had a thing. You
yeah.
could find anything you wanted to on the Corbett Report.
And I still have tons of respect with James Corbett. However, I did ask him. I brought up the moon landings with him, and he believes the moon landings. He believes we made it to the moon, and I didn't dig it any further, but I came to the realization that there's definitely people out there that are bullshitting us on purpose, feeding us misinformation, if you will. But I think there's also people that genuinely believe a certain way, and they really feel that way, even though maybe for us the evidence points completely the opposite direction. I have she's watching right now. She's Miss Heb from Australia. Shout out to Miss Heb, but she loves Trump. She, in her heart of hearts, truly
In
believes
Australia,
Trump is. Yeah, she was like, I wish we had Trump here in Australia. He would change everything. He believes him as the second coming. I mean, for lack of a better term, I'm not making fun of her. I love her to death. She really believes that. And I think she's dead wrong. And so the realization I've come lately is that maybe not everyone is out there bullshitting us. They really believe what they believe and speak. And you know, I was a big follower of many of these other characters, like even a Sam Harris. And I'm ashamed of it now, but I was a fan of his. The way he would have these religious debates, I thought he had excellent points. He would
logical
deconstruct them.
Yeah.
He was excellent. And then it came to COVID, and the way he doubled down on we need to get these goddamn vaccines. We need to do this and that. And I'm like, is this a propagandist? Or does he genuinely believe this shit? And I it's hard to tell, but I think some people really, really believe in certain things that may come across as completely wacky to the rest of us. You know what I'm saying? So someone like Ryan Christian, someone like even James Corbett, in following the NASA moon landings, I saw that in my Odyssey video. My Odyssey video ended up getting well over 1,000 views, which for that platform is pretty damn good. You know, it's the equivalent to getting tens of thousands on YouTube. But I saw people were like, I knew James Corbett was a shill. I knew he was this and that because of the moon landings. And I was like, really? Do we really need to go there? Like, maybe some people really believe a certain way. And it has to be a two-way street, though, because we don't believe with them. They need to respect the fact that we don't believe like them. And I need to respect that maybe they believe in a different way that I don't believe in. I don't know if that made any sense, but it just, you know,
I don't try to judge these people. I don't, you know, it's like I started out with James Corbett on social media. I mean, I was like, I discovered him as like, wow. And no, he had all the like 10 years worth of archive. You could find in a great website. You could just Google something, and there was an alternative story to what you had heard back when. And then, wow, well, that makes more sense than what you remember people saying or what was the official story. And I continued to watch him, and this happens with everybody that I continue to watch or go back and look and see what they've done in the past, which I go back. I realize there are certain places they won't go. You realize it. There are certain places, and this is why I say, in the end, I just say everybody's a limited hangout. There are always, even for me, there's places I won't go. You know, maybe there's a reason why I won't go. I'm not ready to talk about the Holocaust now because it's counterproductive. It's not going to help. I have a lot of better stuff that'll be much more productive, you know, than if I talk about I know a lot about the Holocaust. I know a lot of ways to punch holes in the Holocaust stories because I studied this dang thing. I taught it for 20 years.
Listen to the debate I have on my Odyssey between.
But I don't need to do that. I mean, I would be happy to do it because I don't really care about whatever. I'm not going to see any consequences for doing it. It's not going to affect it. I'm already controversial enough, what it is. But it's just like it's a lot of energy for something that I don't know, people are not ready for what I could do to it. It's
Well,
hard
and
enough for
I
them to
think
do.
for me at least, as soon as I bring it up, I've had conversations with other people, and as soon as I mention it, their skin starts crawling. Like,
Yeah.
they start getting uncomfortable. They're like,
Oh yeah, because are they going to get in trouble? Are they going to be labeled
Yeah,
by
yeah.
association?
yeah,
But to me,
yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't. I'm not talking about what actually happened in Germany. I would talk about what happened afterwards, how this thing that we call the Holocaust was created, just like how the thing called the Bible was created, because it didn't just spring up. There wasn't a thing. It was this
Everything has
creation.
origins.
It was a
Everything
human
has
created
origins.
thing that we call this thing.
And one
And so
thing,
that story, you can tell it. It's in the newspapers. It's, you don't have
the
to.
6
You don't have
million
to make it.
number
Yeah, you can go
was
back and look at that.
in
All those,
print in the late 1800s.
right. So you can see how that was picked up and who did what. Names, people, places, times. They did these things. The same thing with anything that's considered like the Bible or God or the truth or whatever. You can analyze the history of it. Everything like that has a history. And if you stick to that, it's a much safer than well, what happened in some obscure little place there in Poland, and then when there's no other evidence, except this person said that and that person said that, which is always contradictory. So stick to what's in the actually newspapers, and you can tell a very controversial story about something that was invented. And there's books written about that. As long as if you're Jewish, you can write a book about the invention of the Holocaust.
But even what we're saying right now, don't go there. This is anti-Semitic.
Oh, right. You missing comments. I mean, to me, it's like it's just there's so many stories you can tell. You pick your punches. Where do you want to pick your battles?
But
and
this
I'm already controversial enough, so I don't need.
No, and I respect your position. I think for me, I talk about it openly, and why I have my questions about it, because I feel it fills other holes, and so and I guess where I'm coming from is, okay, so this is such a powerful story that was told to us, just like the Bible, just like everything else.
It wasn't told to us when we were kids.
We all saw Schindler's List. We all cried over that. We all did. Some of us have seen shoes at museums. That shit hurts. It produces an emotional effect. And so what if I could prove to you some of that stuff didn't go as like the official story? Okay. So then you have to question everything else. And so the larger point to it being, if I was lied to about this,
the most important thing or something like that.
Yeah.
Like the Bible, you're saying.
Have I been lied to about?
The church.
Well, shit. I went through 9/11. I know I was lied to about that.
Yeah.
I was lied. A lot of people, I made a poll a few weeks ago on my Spotify on what woke you up. And for a lot of people, it was COVID.
Yeah, because they're younger.
COVID woke them up. Yeah. Prior to COVID, they were normies, quote unquote. Shout out to you guys. I'm not making fun of you guys. Shout out to you guys. But prior to COVID, they were normies. They believed official stories. They didn't. And COVID. And so this is my reason of talking about it, is because if you were like, all right, I was lied to about COVID. I was lied to about 9/11. We were lied to into Vietnam. We were lied to about JFK.
Pearl Harbor, Lusitania. Keep going back. How far? Spanish-American War.
U.S.-Mexican War.
Mexican War, exactly.
The Nuremberg conspiracy prior or right after the American Revolution. Do you know about that one, Dr. Bruce?
I've heard of it. I can't remember which one is the Nuremberg.
So the Nuremberg conspiracy, I deem it the first quote unquote official admitted to conspiracy in American history. It happened right after the Revolutionary War, where there was a mutiny amongst the veteran soldiers for the American Revolution that weren't getting paid. They weren't getting paid. The money wasn't worth shit.
Yeah.
And George Washington, in heroic fashion, I'm giving you a very, very synthesized version of this, but George Washington called everyone in. They were speaking, and he resolved it with his powerful words and his powerful speech. And he in essence, this is what we're told. This is the official story. We're told George Washington didn't want to go back, to the British system of money. That's what the whole revolution was about. And he quelled the mutiny and stopped bankers from abroad taking over the new American system. I call that story bullshit. I think the opposite happened, but this is the official story that we're sold.
Until Alexander Hamilton became Secretary of Treasury, and then he kind of did the whole British system.
Yeah, and so that's my whole point. If we can acknowledge, it's another reason why I'm obsessed with the moon landings.
Yeah,
and I love talking about the moon landings, because if you can realize that we were lied to about that, what else have we been lied to about? And there's so many instances I can point to. So anyone saying that, people make fun of people that believe in conspiracies. Oh, if you believe this, you believe in them. Oh, that's not true. That's a flat out generalization, and I would argue the opposite is just as loony. If you don't think any conspiracies happen, because history is literally littered by conspiracies. Look at the execution of Julius Caesar. That was a conspiracy by the damn senators. Yeah. And so these things are nothing new. They're not from the 1960s and onward. These things have gone on for millennia.
But conspiracy does not mean that anymore. It's with that whole reinvention of it. It just meant anybody challenging the official government story was the conspiracy. Because 9/11 is a conspiracy of what? Official story says 19, whoever, Osama bin Laden in a cave with a laptop. That's a conspiracy, but that's an approved official conspiracy. So that's not the same thing as people who question that story. They are the conspiracy theorists because they think somebody in the government actually would lie to them or something. Like, okay, whatever. So it's a meaningless term. It doesn't mean anything anymore, except
it means nothing. Just like being called an anti-Semite or a transphobe or a racist, because it's been overused, it really means nothing anymore. I've been saying it over and over. I know how I feel about people. I personally don't give a shit what anyone believes, so long as your beliefs don't infringe on other people's well-beings. That's the way I look at things. I don't care if you want to believe you're a refrigerator and you want to mate with toasters. If that's, then as long as you're not hurting anyone else, I don't give a damn.
Oh, you don't care about toasters?
So my way of looking at it is I don't care. So if anyone wants to slap any kind of quote unquote hateful label at me, do it. I don't care. It doesn't do shit to me. I know that I'm not that way. And if some of the factual shit that I say hurts you, then maybe you need to do some self-introspection and figure out where that's coming from.
All the power to you.
Yeah. Dr. Bruce, I don't know. Did you have any other points?
No, I'm talked out. We've been over 2 hours.
That was a great conversation.
Yeah, last time too. I like them. And I do. I don't know how I could. Last time was all about the search for truth and historical method. So that was pretty coherent. This one is like all over the place. I don't know if I could retweet this as a way like, oh, it's an opportunity to watch this 2 hour, 15-minute talk about everything. I enjoy it. I hope somebody else does too. But, I don't really watch too many other people's. I don't watch this one, actually. I don't personally go back and watch myself. Like those movie stars don't want to watch themselves on the screen.
Yeah,
like, wow. This one I can see myself. I see exactly what I look like.
I'll force you to watch it by clipping out. It sucks the way Twitter did it now. Like,
do something controversial. Say something, find a blurb. I say something really controversial, and I will retweet it. Maybe that might get attention. I like that.
I'll be doing some homework. I've been marking some of the interesting points, but no, I'll find a good 45-second clip, which unfortunately it used to give you 2 minutes and 20 seconds, so you can try to pick out. Now 45 seconds, like holy shit! It becomes a task.
Because of Rumble or because of?
I have no idea. I could only do 45-minute clip on Twitter.
Twitter.
Yeah,
I still got 2 hours 20. 2 minutes 20 seconds still.
Not me. I wonder if something happened to me. I can't do 2 minutes, 2 minutes and 20
minutes,
seconds. I'm only allowed 45 seconds max. So
wow.
it makes my task as a
harder. You got to find that little 45-second
like,
thing.
I got to find the right 45 seconds.
Something controversial
that's going to catch people's attention, but it is what it is. I'll definitely be doing that. Dr. Bruce Baird, always fun. We'll
anytime. I enjoy talking to you too.
Yeah, we'll have to do another one. I really like this one because we did jump from topic to topic to topic because I mean we hit current events, we hit some historical facts.
Marcus
Aurelius got brought into the mix, vibing with the universe.
Vibing with the universe. I like that. I'm going to do that today, I think. Vibe with the universe.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite quote of his. Yeah, we touched on so many things, and I'm sure we could do another show down the road and
sure, anytime,
hit other rabbit holes, if you will. I mean, I as you can see, I'm quite the history nerd myself, so anytime we can dig into
I love history.
Oh, I love it. It's my wheelhouse. Even though, like you mentioned yourself, there's a lot of history that we have to question.
And I forgot the Newberg conspiracy. Really I don't remember that one. Those cells got burned somewhere.
Yeah, that was at the very top of the show.
I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah. No, fascinating as always. Where would be the best places that you would direct people to search you out, Doctor?
Go to my Twitter page, Dr. Baird. Oh, wait, sorry. Twitter.com/Dr. Baird Online. Everything I have is Dr. Baird Online, DrBairdOnline. You know, I tell my students call me Dr. Baird, and now I'm online. I didn't exist in the classroom anymore, but that was the origins of that. And DrBairdOnline.com, if you really, that's the mission of stuff I have, but some good articles. But it also is on the Twitter page. So all you got to do is go to the Twitter page. And that's where, look at my pinned tweet. People love my pinned tweet there. It captures 9/11 and the Beirut blast all wrapped up in one. And every time I retweet it gets 20 more people who like it or retweet it because they just, it's a start. And then it could go from there. All these other things. If you want to search me on anything, you do a Twitter search. I could do this on Google. You put, the ampersand, Dr. Baird Online, and then put a key term, a keyword, one or a phrase. I probably have said something about that, and you can go right into there, some thread that I did, and look all around in there. So anything controversial, I probably have tweeted about, except the Newberg conspiracy. I haven't done that one yet.
Yeah, Newberg conspiracy. I've been bringing that up because I haven't heard. You know how everyone likes to have their own little thing their own little thing. I've been bringing it up. I brought it up to James Corbett and some other people.
That was my field. I was early American history. That was what my field is. I taught graduate students in that, and I don't remember the Newberg conspiracy. So
Newberg conspiracy.
I read books on the American Revolution, and I don't remember that. So
when I started doing my show, I was like, man, I need to be well versed on a lot of this stuff. I already had a pretty good background on a lot of stuff, but just a little bit. And I was like, man, I'd like to focus on a couple of things, and the Newberg conspiracy was one of those. Because I didn't hear anyone talking about the Newberg conspiracy.
No, and how it's still relevant.
So like, shit,
the first conspiracy.
I'd like to talk about it to put that out there and let other folks dig into it. So
a little tease. You're a tease.
Maybe you know what? Maybe. We can do a show that's focused on the Newberg conspiracy.
Thank you. I'll pass
more detail. That would be.
Awesome. Yeah, there is some interesting stuff there in the American Revolutionary time period that you could talk about. Yeah, but
the problem with that is you just don't know what
you lose your audience.
How much of it is actual truth? Like the whole George Washington chopping down the cherry tree. That seems there. And there's so many things that I guess I could open up another can of worms. I mean, that's my religious beef, is that we know these exact words that Jesus said 2,000 years ago
in Aramaic, by the way, too.
In Aramaic, but we don't. We have tidbits of George Washington from only a couple hundred years ago.
Yeah. Well, you really go to newspaper. You had newspapers back then. See when that story came out. It was invented, and you can know the year, the day, and who did it, who came up with that story, and that's where it became part of history.
The Lord.
Somebody said something that was for some other purpose than factual presentation. It was just a political story. Meant to sell a candidate or something, and they made up stories.
Propaganda.
Yeah, propaganda. Exactly. Father of our country. And no children, but father of our country. Yeah.
100%. Dr. Bruce, always a pleasure.
Right.
Thank you. And I feel honored to call you a friend. Always excellent chats. And I will be searching you out since you are shadow banned, and I will be liking and 100%.
If you do, spread the word. Spread the word. I
Thank
don't
you so
call it
much,
spread the word.
Yeah.
All right, Weezy.
All righty. Take care now.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.